Hey guys, Russ Tyndall here with Blue Line CNC. Welcome to another video. In this video, we are going to show you how I create a blue line flag. And it all starts with a basic outline, and that's where everything starts. And from there, we bring in our graphics, we bring in our patches or our badges, but we have to have an area where we start from. We have to have a baseline. And that's what we're doing in this video. I'm going to show you how I create it in Vectric. I'm going to show you what my workflow is for that American flag, and then in some subsequent videos that are going to follow, we're going to create a police graphic using Adobe Illustrator. We're going to bring that vector file into this file that we create here, and then we're going to do some tool pathing, and then we're going to take that out to the shop and we're going to actually cut it out on the Avid CNC, and we're going to create something beautiful. So come along for the ride and let's have some fun. Okay, now how I start out and how I create all my flags is I have to start out with a basic outline and and shape. And I have that saved as a template as basic flag 15 by 28.5. That's my measurements. And rather than just pull that up, I want to show you how we actually create that and how we create that template. It's actually quite simple. There's a few steps we have to go through to get there though. So let's do that and follow along. I'm going to create a new file here. My objective is not to show you Vectric. I hope you have a basic understanding of the Vectric line of software. If you don't, there's a lot of sources out there. Vectric has some online tutorials where you can teach yourself this. It's not that complicated. I have a tendency to go a little too fast sometimes, so if you're relying on me to learn some of this stuff, you're going to probably have to pause it or stop and rewind and revisit some of my video a little bit and go back and rewind, if you know what I'm trying to say. So hopefully you'll get this the first time and we can just move through it. But we'll go ahead and we'll go through. Like I say, I'm not intending on teaching you Vectric, but this is just rather, and this is not a tutorial, but rather just to show you my workflow on this project. And hopefully you'll pick something up from it and you'll be able to learn something. That's my intent. So let's move on. So it's a single-sided project, my job setup, and my flags are 28.5 inches in width by 15 inches in height, 3/4 of an inch thickness, and we're dealing in inches, of course. My Z0 position is the material surface, and my XY datum position for the design portion of this project is going to be the center. And modeling resolution, we're not dealing with 3D or anything like that, so let's just skip over that part, and we don't need it. So we'll just hit OK. And we've got our basic dimensions, 28.5 wide by 15 inches in height. Now we have to create some guides in here and some things to align our elements, so to speak, our stripes and our stars and our union. So in order to do that, we need to create a couple rectangles, and this is just going to make your life a lot easier when you start creating your flag elements. The first thing we want to do is create an outline of this flag that we just created, that same dimension of a rectangle. So we're going to create a square. We don't want any radiuses, and we want it 28.5 by 15 inches in height. And we're going to create that. Now, how do we know? We don't see anything on there. How do we know it created? Well, let's close that, and if we come over here and highlight it, we can see how it turned a little bit pink in color. That tells us that we created a rectangle. It's just sitting on the outside of our job setup, so we don't see it. But by highlighting it like that and seeing it in pink, we know it's there. So now what we have to do is create a union. We need a union, and the union is which contains the stars. That's the rectangle which contains the stars on the American flag, and it sits in the upper left. So how do we know the proper dimensions of that? I'm sure you've all looked at an American flag and seen projects out there on the web that dimensionally they just don't look right. Maybe the union's a little bit too short and it looks a little funky. And you can see where the artist or the designer didn't research that maybe as best as they could have. I don't want you to do that. I want you to do it the right way. In order to do it the right way, you have to have the right ratios. The United States flag code is very specific of that. So let's go take a look and let's see where I get my measurements from. If you do a search engine search for flag calculators, you can come up with a number of them. Just like Google them and you'll see there's so many flag calculators out there. In particular, I like Omni Calculator though. This is what I use, and what it does is it allows you to punch in a number, any single number, and based on the number you put, it will calculate the rest of them. So for example, I know that the length of my flag is 28.5 inches in length. Well, based on that number, it automatically calculates everything else. So it takes the math out of everything. I don't have to worry about it, and neither will you. And if you see here these numbers, it's just all arbitrary. And that's what's great about this calculator. Like the stripe width is H. Well, if you look at H, that's right here. That's the width of your stripes. It tells you that it's 1.1535 inches. That's all you need to know. It tells you the diameter of the star. It tells you everything. It makes life easier. So just use this calculator. So we're dealing with the union. So let's get some measurements. We can see that the length is 11.4 and we can see the width is 8.078. So I'm going to highlight 8.078 and control it, or copy it to the clipboard rather. And let's go back to Vectric and let's create a rectangle, and let's make our width 11.4, which is what we want there. And we want our height to be 8.078. And let's create a rectangle. There is our union. And now what we need to do is align that union with this rectangle and move it to the upper left part of that rectangle and align it to this edge and align it to this edge. So how do we do that? Well, we highlight it first, and then we hold down our shift button and highlight what we want to align to. And then we're going to come over to our align selected objects button. We're going to click on it, and we want to select our inside edge left and our inside edge top. And you can see what that did is it brought it all the way up to the left and the top. So let's close that. And let's click off of that so we don't move those rectangles accidentally. Now we need to create some stars. So how do we do that? We're going to come up to our star creation tool, and we want a 5-pointed star. And let me jump down here at the bottom and explain something. Stars, if you can see right here where I'm moving my mouse, if we want that to be perfectly straight across and these stars to be perfectly straight the way they are supposed to be, I would say use a 30. I use 38.3. Use 38.3 to 38.5. Anywhere in there is going to get you right where you need to be. If you start getting into the 40s, you're going to get some stars that do not look right, and they're going to look pretty weird. So use 38.3. That's what I use. And then, like I say, it's a 5-pointed star. We need to figure out what our outer radius is. Well, if we go back to the calculator, we can see that the star's diameter is 0.924. So let's come back to Vectric and let's go to 0.924. You're probably saying, hey Russ, you just put in the diameter. We want the radius. Well, yeah, we do want the radius, and it's very easy to fix that. So let's just go ahead and put divided by 2 and use our equal sign on our keyboard, and that gives us 0.462 inches, and that's the radius of the star. So we're going to go ahead and hit create, and that's going to put a perfect star, the right size, right where we told it, which is center point 0 on the X and Y axis. So we don't need this anymore. We're only creating one star. We're not going to create 50 of these. It would take forever. We're just going to use an array copy, and we're going to make a bunch of copies of this. So let's move this kind of up. Whoops. Let's move this up here in the upper left where it's kind of as for a starting position, so to speak. And let's highlight it and use our array copy. Now we want one row, but we want a number of columns. So we want one row, and we want six stars. And if you look at the union, it alternates. Let's go back here. It alternates between 6 stars and 5 stars, and it just does that throughout the entire union. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stars, and it does that 5 times, and then it does 5 stars 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So let's go ahead and go back to Vectric, and we want one row, 6 columns, and what do we want our gap to be on the x-axis? Because the x-axis is, of course, this plane right here, left to right. So if we jump back over to Omni Calculator, we can see the F, which that measurement is F. That's the star gap in length. It's 0.945. So let's come here to 9 and put in 9.945 in the gap on the x-axis. And then if we hit copy, you can see what it does. It puts the correct number of stars there, right where we want it. Now, what I like to do is I will take this group of stars and I will group it. I hit G on my keyboard. Actually, let me go Control Z on that first. And I'm going to hit Control, hold that down, and create another set and just move it up. And I'm going to take 1 star here and delete it. This is going to make a lot of sense in a second. So for this one, now I'm going to hit G on my keyboard and group it. And I'm going to go ahead and I want to create 1 column of 5 rows. So is it 5 rows? Let's double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. We want 1 column, and we want 5 rows of this. And we want to space it out this measurement right here, E, which is 0.81 on the y-axis. And it's negative 0.81. And then this will be 0. So we'll copy that. See what it did? It put the correct number of stars in our union there. Now, here's why we took 1 star off is we just want to go ahead and group this just to keep them together. Let's click on it and let's go ahead and align that kind of as best as where we can get it. So now what we can do is select that. Let's create another offset, or excuse me, an array copy. And what we want is 2, 3, 4. We want 1 column, 4 rows. So 1 column, 4 rows, and we want the same measurement, 0.81, negative 0.81, and that will bring it down. If we took the minus sign off of there and made it a positive number, it would put them up in the up direction, but we want it to go down. So yeah, that's where we want that. So let's just hit copy, and that makes those stars and those groups of stars appear right where we need it. So now we can take all these stars and let's just group them all as one big group before we forget, like we did last time. We don't want to do that. So the last step is just creating our stripes. So let's close that. Now, in order to create our stripes, it's nothing more than another rectangle that we're going to do an array copy of. So let's get our width of our stripes. Let's go back to Omni Calculator, and our stripe width, as you can tell, is 1.1535. So let's copy that to the clipboard, Control C, and let's go ahead and go back to Vectric, and let's create a rectangle. Now, the rectangle that I like to create, I want my rectangle to extend a 1/2 inch beyond this right edge and a 1/2 inch beyond the left edge. And that's for tooling purposes that you'll see later on when we go further into this flag design. But for right now, I'll tell you right now what it's for. So when it's positioned on the CNC and the bit is traversing across the flag and it's carving out the wood, we don't leave any corners. We want it to clear the edge of the wood, so that's why we do that. So I'm going to go ahead and create my my rectangles for the stripes. So I want the height to be that measurement that we just pulled from Omni Calculator, which is 1.1535. We want our width to be 29.5. Our flag is 28.5, and we want it to extend a 1/2 inch beyond each side. So let's go ahead and create one. And there, you can see what it did. So let's highlight that stripe, and then we're going to select this guide down here, and then we're going to align it, and we want the bottom inside edge. All right, now we are just going to simply close this, and we're going to do an array copy of that one stripe. Here I want 13 stripes, so I want one column, 13 rows, no gap, so let's take the gap off. And yeah, right there, that's all we need. We're going to copy it. We can see that it did that 13 stripes. So now my flags, and if this is the way you choose to do this as well, I carve the white stripes out. So that means I need to take away the black stripes or the red stripes of the American flag. And by carving out the white stripe, that's going to leave this part raised and this part raised and this part raised, if you see where I'm going with that. So when you paint that, that's gonna, and you carve out the white, it only leaves that surface color by itself. And you'll see all that. This is going to make a lot more sense to you when we get out to the shop and I show you the actual flow of how this stuff's made. So let's go ahead and highlight that black one, that top black stripe, and we're gonna get the second. Whoops, we don't want that one. We want this, we want that, we want that, we want that, and we want that. And we're gonna hit delete on our keyboard, and as you can see, that deletes all the black stripes and leaves only the white stripes. So let's close the array copy and let's open node editing, because what we need to do is we got to bring these nodes of these stripes over to this edge of the union, this right side of the union, because it's going through all the stars, and we can't have that. So let's just highlight that once, and let's bring it back over our mouse and select them again until they're all red. And then we're going to use our right arrow on our keyboard, and we're just going to slide these nodes over, and we're going to zoom in as tight as we possibly can. Maximum resolution. And that's as far as we can go. That's about as good as we're going to get. The naked eye is not going to be able to tell that difference. It's about a thousandth, if that. It's probably a half a thou, a tenth of a thou. I don't know. You're never going to be able to see that. So there we go. There's our stars and stripes. And that's our basic flag template that we're going to use. So what we need to do now is we don't need our guides anymore, so we can select. Well, let's click off that and let's get our actual selection tool back. Let's get our guides and let's hit delete. We don't need them anymore, and you can see the basic flag, what we're going to do. And that's what we're using for our tool paths. There's actually only, there's 3 tool paths here, and we'll get into tool pathing this thing later. But we've got one tool path for our union, our stars, and then we've got two tools that we're going to use to cut out our stripes. We're going to use a 1/4 inch end mill and an 1/8 inch end mill. And a 1/4 inch end mill hogs out most of this, and then we use an 1/8 inch end mill to get in real tight on these corners, which cleans that up and makes them look really nice. It also makes it look really nice when we pull in our graphic and we position our graphic on the flag, which will sit about right here, and our stripes come up against that graphic. They're going to have to come up and create a nice outline around that graphic. So we don't want to use a 1/4 inch end mill. It'll just leave too much rounding around that. It won't look good. We want to get in as close as possible to that edge, and you'll see how that flow goes later in the next couple of videos. So from here, the next video is going to be designing a graphic in Adobe Illustrator. That has a potential of being a little longer of a video, but I just want to show you how I do it. And then we're going to bring in that graphic in a form of a vector, and we'll bring that into this very flag that we just created. And then we're going to take, like I said, we're going to take it out to the shop and we're going to cut it on the CNC on the Avid. So let's go ahead and save this. And how we do that is we're just going to go up to File. We're going to save as. I'm just going to save this on my desktop, and I'm going to call it sample flag. Let's hit save. So when we get into Toolpath, that'll all take place over on the right side of the screen. But for right now, we're gonna call it on this video. I'm sure this has been long enough. I'm looking on my timer and it says 24 minutes right now. So that's good enough for now. So stay tuned for video number 2, guys.